Welcome to How Did You Manage That?
This is a podcast where we talk to music managers about their journeys, the lows, the highs, and everything in between.
My name's Ally.
My name's Sophie.
And this podcast is all about getting inside the minds of some of the managers behind the biggest act in the planet.
Hold on, Ally. I think we need to say that it's not just the biggest managers on the planet. We're also going to be talking to new managers about how they're doing it right now, breaking acts through new methods. So it's not all superstars.
Yeah, this is a podcast about innovation, about what goes on behind the scenes on making an artist's career from the very start to the dizzying heights of the music industry.
It's worth saying that Ally and I both work in the music industry and have worked in all the different sides of it. But like anyone, we're always still learning, and we thought we'd start this podcast because there's so many people out there with amazing knowledge, especially around music management.
Some of my favourite lessons I've learnt in music are from just sitting down over a pint or a coffee and meeting someone new. So we thought we'd try and make a podcast out of that.
This podcast is brought to you by the Music Managers Forum, aka the MMF, who are the largest collective of professional music managers in the world and are there to support you as a manager. So if you're thinking of becoming a manager, check them out at themmf.net.
And we are incredibly lucky to be sponsored and supported by AWOL. AWOL is Cobalt's unique alternative to the traditional music label, empowering artists and independent labels to make, release and market the music that they love. So a massive thanks to them, because without that help, we would not have the time to make this podcast. Right, let's get into it. We are so excited to kick off our first ever episode of How Did You Manage That with a pretty special and incredible and lovely manager by the name of Jamie Oborne.
Most people will know Jamie as the manager of the phenomenally successful global super act in 1975 with his management company All on Red. But he also owns and runs the record label Dirty Hit, which is home to loads of amazing artists such as the 1975, Wolf Alice, No Rome, Pale Waves, Japanese House, and just loads more incredible talent.
So not long after the 1975's third album was released, Jamie invited Sophie and I down to the Dirty Hit offices in West London to chat about his amazing journey in music management, to share some of his stories and wisdom at the same time, and he has got a heck of a lot of that. Oh, and a quick little disclaimer. Most of these interviews took place in coffee shops, offices, backstage at gigs, so there might be a little bit of background noise, but hey, that's atmosphere, right? And in music management, nothing's ever perfect. So without any further ado, here is the excellent Jamie Oborne, manager of the 1975. We're in West London. Jamie has very kindly taken the time to sit with us. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
How's your Tuesday going?
It's going very well, thank you. Welcome to Dirty Hit.
Thank you. It's a beautiful office. There's quite a few things in the wall.
/ All on Red, right?
Yeah.
Okay, just checking. That's the management side, and it's a management podcast.
Yes. How long have you been here?
It'll be 3 years in September.
Nice. And it's obviously developed quite a lot. How many staff we got here? We've got
10, but I don't think not everyone's here today. Some people are in America. Some people are in the UK. Just not here.
So one of the questions that we always start off with on the podcast is, what was your first experience of music that you remember?
The first experience of music. My first experience would have been just looking through different LPs that my parents had, and being attracted to the artwork. I think I remember. I think it's Led Zeppelin 2 or maybe 3, whichever one has the gyroscopic wheel. Yeah, that was my first experience of music, was looking at this record cover and just wondering what it held within it. Do you know what I mean? Because it was such a beautiful piece of art, really, the packaging. Yeah, that was probably my first memory of music.
And from your sort of first memory of music into who you are and what you do today, what do you think it means to be a manager today?
What does it mean to be a manager? Well, I guess the principle of management is to represent an artist. So I tend to, I'm quite like ethically quite stubborn when it comes to sort of my artists' careers and their rights and what that means and how they should be protected and amplified, or what am I trying to say? The actual core principle of management for me is artist facilitation and making sure that their careers become what they want them to become. I'm not explaining myself very well, but I really try and like amplify without colouring. I always say it's pushing it forward on their terms, and that's not to say that I don't challenge and argue. Like, I mean, geez, like I have like strong opinions and stuff. I'm not saying I don't have opinions, but ultimately my core role is to make sure that their voice is heard and is undiluted.
Mm-hmm. So let's take it right back to the start.
Mm-hmm.
How did you get into management?
I was in a band, and we had a record deal and stuff. And when that ended, I went back to university as like a mature student. Yeah, it was shit. No, it's education's amazing, but I went to university, did my degree, and after that, just one night I was with a friend of mine. We were chatting about my band actually, and what he was asking me what my perceived failings were, or why it didn't happen for me, and aside from I don't think my band was really good enough to ever compete with certainly any artist that I manage. Mm-hmm. So that was one factor, and then the other factor I think was the management company we were with at the time were quite a big management company, mm-hmm. and their methodology seemed to be to take on a lot of artists and to not really do very much, mm-hmm. just to kind of wait and see kind of what happened, and then they would put their efforts into the stuff. A lot to the wall. Yeah, I mean, you know what? I say that, but I say it loosely because I don't think I should judge anyone on how perhaps I behaved at that time as an artist, because I don't think I necessarily was an easy artist to manage, and certainly wasn't good enough to warrant how difficult it would have been to manage that. So it was out of that conversation we decided to start a management company. Yeah. And the next day, bizarrely, we found an artist. And like within a few weeks, I'd signed to Island Records, and it was just like someone else's life. But do you know what? I'm selling myself short. It wasn't quite that quick, and it seemed very quick. But what I knew at the beginning was you needed to create conversation around you, and you needed to create something that people desired. So I knew I needed to create some noise, so I met through a friend of mine, this girl who I was really friendly with, used to go out with Brett Anderson, bizarrely. Not while I knew her, before I knew her. And her and I were chatting, and she was like, "Oh, you need to get a press agent." And I was like, "Yeah, of course, that's exactly what we need." Telling her my theory, and she's like, "Oh, you need to just get a press agent, and they'll start some noise." And she was saying that she knew this guy Phil Savage from Savage and Best back in the day. Do you ever heard of him?
No. I do, yeah.
If you were a Britpop band, right. And they were your press agents, you'd probably be on the cover of Enemy.
You're sorry.
Yeah. So Phil Savage, to be fair, created a bit of a conversation.
Excellent.
And we got a record deal, and and then that was the start of it, and that was an absolute disaster. Yeah. Because I didn't really know what I was doing. But what I find in life is that one learns how to do stuff by trial and error.
So that was your journey into management, and the first band that you managed that you said was signed to Island Records, and then it all went to shit. Can I use that in the podcast? So to speak. And obviously one of the bands that you're most famously known for today is the 1975. Can you tell us a bit about how you came across them, how you wooed them into letting you manage them, so to speak.
Okay.
Or it could be the other way. Maybe they wooed
Do
you.
you know
That
what? It
can
was
happen.
very sort of organic. I managed a band called One Night Only.
Yeah, I remember them well. In fact, I
Yeah.
think I had them play some very strange student radio in Stirling.
Yeah,
In the middle of
probably,
nowhere.
yeah.
Lovely guys.
Probably, yeah.
Lovely guys.
And they did pretty good actually. And through that band, I tour managed them as well to start with,
Right.
because that's what you do, and you
It's the only way the manager gets paid
Yeah.
at the start.
That's what you got to do. And on these early tours, I would always see like loads of young kids, but I would see this one girl, and here we are. And I just had a daughter actually at the time, so maybe that counts why I noticed.
Right.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And she was at all these gigs, different around the country, and she was super young, like maybe like 14.
Uh-huh.
And one day when she was buying a T-shirt, I said to her, "Look, how come you're out of these shows? Like, do your parents know that you're travelling around, like, watching bands?"
Yeah.
Because, these shows are hours apart, and I'm seeing you at them.
And she was alone.
Yeah. Well, I thought she was. And she's like, "Oh yeah, my dad's here too. He also loves the band." And I was like, "Okay, fair enough." And then about a year later, I got this random MySpace message. This is in the day of MySpace,
Excellent.
saying, my friend's in the band called Drive Like I Do, and I just thought you'd like them, and here's a video. And it was the first version of a song called Robbers, and it was a video for that song, and I felt like I felt every time I hear that song. And so I tried to get a hold of them, and it took a minute to get a hold of Matthew. Of course, makes perfect sense now. I thought he was playing hard to get, but he was just being, he was like
aloof, maybe.
He was just
Just an artist.
yeah, he was. Even then, he was exactly the same. He's completely obsessed with his work,
Uh-huh.
And I eventually spoke to them, and I drove up to Manchester within the same week and sat down with them, and they played in their rehearsal room, and I thought, I genuinely, you can tell, I'm just like, I thought they were fucking amazing. Like, at that point, they were like 16, 17, and they had already been a band for like 5 years.
Bloody hell.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And like George, the drummer, was still like, even then, you could tell he was going to be one of the best drummers in the world. Do you know what I mean? Because he is like one of the best drummers in the world. Anyway, so they were amazing, and and after they finished playing, I said, like, I want to manage you. I have a management company. I've done this so far.
Yep.
I want to do as much as possible. And and Matthew was like, "Oh, we really like you. We really want you to manage us, but we don't have any money. We can't pay you." And I was like, "Oh man, that's it doesn't
not how this
matter
works."
because
Yeah.
like you only like that it doesn't work like that.
Uh-huh.
Like I only get paid if you get paid."
That's really interesting. It's something to touch on, I think, because obviously part of this podcast is educating younger managers, and maybe younger acts who are listening to it and trying to figure out what makes a good manager before they embark on looking for management themselves. And it's really interesting that you said that they thought that they would have to pay you. But obviously it doesn't work like that. You get a percentage of what they get.
Yeah,
and I think that's
exactly.
a really interesting thing to look at, because... Yeah. I was just thinking out loud. It's brain farting.
I was going to pick up on the fact of, like, a lot of things changed, obviously. From that moment when you met the guys, went up to Manchester, to now, management has probably changed hugely. We'll get onto that in a minute. But one thing that probably hasn't changed is that building of a relationship. No matter what's going on in the industry. How do you find that process of just going to meet some 16-year-olds? Did you say you just had a daughter at that time?
Yeah.
And you're just like, hey, how's it going? Is that a weird process for you even now with a label, or do you embrace that?
I kind of love that bit, to be honest. When I meet someone who I sort of connect with, like, artistically, it's really special. It's one of the reasons that I sort of get up. Do you know what I mean? yeah, I don't really know how to describe it. But yeah, it's really special, isn't it? And I don't know if I get. I mean, sometimes what I do feel a lot when I'm in those situations is that, you know, like say, like in a rehearsal room, like listening to someone play, it's really intimate, right? And I think a lot of the time, one of the things I always say is I point out to the artist in question that it's equally as weird for me.
Yeah, this situation is weird.
Yeah, it's like, and what I find is that sort of really makes it less weird.
Totally.
If I say to them, this is fucking weird.
Yeah, let's all embrace how fucking strange. Me standing in a room watching you play, and we're both trying to kind of impress each other.
And I tell them that I'm not going to clap and shit like that, just so it's not weird. And then I always clap, which makes it weird again.
What else do you do when a band stop a song?
I'm not going to clap. Do you know what I mean? Sorry, I've forgotten your question.
Totally. No, it was just about that initial meeting, because it is such a strange thing. You're trying to form a relationship
but
with
I
someone.
love that. And you know what I find, honestly, I think, and this is really important if anyone is looking for management, like, trust your instinct. Like, I know immediately whether I'm going to get something or not. Like, immediately. And I'm always right. And I think, you know, you sort of feel when you connect with someone. Do you know what I mean? And sometimes it's funny, actually, because there's the couple of times that I felt that, and then obviously the artist hasn't, they've kind of come back round.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Having noticed what I'm just talking about. And obviously, like, I haven't ever gone back on it, though, because I just feel like it's forward gaze, right? Searching for that stuff. I don't think you can do it retrospectively.
Yeah, that moment's almost gone.
Yeah.
Do you feel?
And also, like, yeah, I don't know. We do things in quite a particular way here, and sometimes it puts me off if people have put out too much music. And,
right.
Do you know what I mean? Haven't started the trajectory right.
So maybe better to move on to talking about the job itself, and let's get straight into. I would argue you'd probably have a better perspective than most of right now the challenges that face a music manager, being able to see it from an area of pretty damn high success.
Yeah, it's challenges. I mean, I always say that a good manager should understand the minutiae of a label, and a good label should understand the minutiae of a manager's role. And, you know, I've sort of actively built that here, like we have. I am a manager, but I also own, I think, one of the leading UK independent record companies. Do you know what I mean? Maybe not in terms of revenue, but that's just time.
In terms of profile, you couldn't really argue with that.
Yeah, and a good manager should understand, like, it's the label, and a good label should understand the manager. Like, we have both here, and I've sort of, like, I kind of built that the reason that I built that on purpose was because, you know, say like a band like 975, like, no one wanted to sign them for starters, like, at all. No one would sign them. Like three times. I don't mean 3 different labels.
Yeah.
I mean every label 3 times.
Wow.
So like 50 passes, let's say.
Wow.
Globally.
Yeah.
Like,
you're trying every.
Fuck off. So, which was baffling, I have to say. And whilst that was going on, I had signed a couple of deals with artists to other labels, and I had become acutely aware of the lead into the deal. Everyone wants to facilitate you, right? You do the deal, and then you're facilitating the label. It's fucking weird. How's that happen?
Yeah.
Like, how's that like the natural shift? Is it because, like, I'm an inexperienced manager, people don't listen to me, or is it just the culture? And I think it's maybe a bit of both. I think it's maybe 25% of it was me, not knowing how to, like, navigate that system effectively
And convert that excitement
which I know, which I kind of feel I know how to do now. And the other part of it was just culturally, you know, the 1975 do not have an artist proposition. Period. So we're not going to work with you. And I remember sitting in a planning meeting for another artist actually, and the first thing that the president of the label said was who we selling records to, and which was a great point.
Good
and
question,
obviously
yeah.
the first thing you should talk about, and in our meetings I have to say, like, I say that a lot, like at the beginning, but it seemed bizarre that I was, what really struck me was that was the first time like any of that team had thought about that, and I thought, wow, like you know, but this band has just committed like fucking their young adult life to you, and you've paid a lot of money for it, and you haven't even thought about who's selling records to. It's fucking bizarre.
Yes.
So I think initially what I saw as a challenge was just retaining control and retaining like the ability to actually amplify your artist's vision. Do you know what I mean? And now, obviously, 10 years later, the challenges are like a tide, aren't they? So there's it depends on.
Yeah, I guess the gatekeepers have changed.
Yeah,
a lot.
I mean, it's funny though, because when I think about like the modern music landscape, even when I started, it was like really in kind of. It was kind of the end of the historical record business, right? And but for me, it was kind of all I knew, like that, you know, the trough of the market, if you like. So for me, it seemed like, you know, a sort of just another example of sort of kind of economic law that businesses mutate or they fail. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it never seemed like a scary place for me, like a mutating industry. It felt like a kind of a healthy. It felt like water finding its way.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Rather than a dam. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So that isn't a challenge. But you know.
But that's a really good skill to identify.
Yeah,
to have to be comfortable with that chaos.
I felt all right with it. Yeah. I know.
Are the challenges?
Feeling comfortable with chaos is a whole podcast in itself.
Yeah.
There's a serious.
We call.
We should start that. Yeah.
Do you know that music for cars? Yeah, you've heard that term.
Of course.
And abbreviated is MFC.
Right.
Yeah. And Ed, who is the GM of Dirty Hit, my sort of right hand man now, is we coin this expression "motherfucking chaos," which is how we refer to the campaign.
Don't know if that's a good campaign or a bad campaign.
It's a great campaign.
It's a fucking brilliant campaign.
No, it's amazing because it's like real time, right?
Yes.
It's like it's kind of, you know, it's future. You know what I mean? It's good.
But yeah, you've got to be able to write that. You've got to be able to just go.
It's really like it's not like a I don't know. I was about to say sometimes I really want to have a bit of.
There's an element of perfect storm there, I suppose.
Yeah. Sometimes
Very much
I was going to say sometimes I don't want it to be a storm, but then I do really.
Can't control the weather.
Yeah. But it's definitely a first world problem.
I think a lot of younger managers we've spoken to in this podcast who are just starting out, they feel their challenges, particularly when it comes to deals and labels, is, and obviously you've probably seen both sides of this, everything is so data driven at the moment. So a label won't touch their artist or look at their artist necessarily unless they've had so many million streams or whatever. And I interviewed it's madness, I know. And I interviewed a younger manager earlier today who was amazing, young woman, and she was saying how she doesn't care and all she wants to do is build from live, and live is the most important thing to her, and she'll go and tour wherever the hell they can in the UK and build the fans from there, and it will come. And she said to me, we've had so much trouble just getting A&Rs to get to the live shows. Even one is 2 doors down from one of the A&Rs lives and he won't come. So I always think it's really interesting how you navigate that challenge now, because obviously you've seen both sides of it. Before, streams were the ultimate sort of
Yeah,
A&R tool,
yeah.
and now,
Yeah.
you know, it's different.
I mean, I don't know, man. It's not my language, you know what I mean? I don't really... I sign something because I love it, not because... It's like I said a minute ago, if it's released too much music, sometimes it puts me off. I think that manager's probably going to do really well.
Hopefully.
Yeah, I don't know. I data-driven signing. I mean, it's just not why I started label. You know,
Yeah.
it just doesn't. It doesn't. I'm confused when people say that to me. Genuinely. I think I try. I don't know. I trust my own sort of feeling on stuff. You know, really. I think. I don't mean that in an arrogant way. But like I made a record by an artist called Ben Khan, who's kind of a genius, but he's a little bit of a saboteur, if I'm being honest, self-saboteur. But he's a genius, and we made this record, and I made it because I just think he's really important, and here's a good thing. So I always say to Matty, who is torn. Matthew is kind of, you know, he's a classic example of a great front person in that massive ego, no self-worth. Do you know what I mean? Great for making music, terrible for mental health.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? And the reason I say that is because, you know, he will cripple himself thinking about what you're thinking about him. Do you know what I mean?
Right.
And yet when he does his best work is when he's only thinking about the virtue in his work. Do you know what I mean? And I always say we have this thing, and I always say to him, it's like, it sounds stupid saying it now, but I always say to him, who was number one when Loaded by the Velvet Underground come out? Like, who was number one that week in America? And he's like, I don't fucking know. And I was like, exactly. Like, who gives a fuck? Do you know what I mean? Because go and have a look. It's no one you've ever heard of. And yet we've all listened to that record, and it was like number 160. Do you know what I mean?
Oh.
So I hope that helps.
It's good. Here's a bit of a curveball one. Is there, and feel free to ignore this question if there's not, is there any decision, good or bad, that you would reverse, that you've made in your management career? I don't know if that laugh means which one, or if that laugh means fuck off.
Well, that laugh would mean so many.
Oh my god, that laugh means I don't know, I could upset so many people.
We
do you know what?
names.
Honestly, I don't really live like that. I'm sort of, I'm looking forward. And I don't really look backwards. I can't. It sort of fucking freaks me out, to be honest with you.
I'm getting that.
If I start thinking too much about, you know, because I've been getting a lot of that. I know it sounds like being egotistical, and I'm not. You know, people often say, like, you know, wow, it's like fucking amazing. Like, how is this? How are you doing it? Like Wolf Alice, Japanese House, you know, 975. You know, whoever, like No Rome, you know, how are you doing this? And I don't know, it's kind of confusing, isn't it? Because I don't really see we're doing anything. We're just...
Oh, it's not come overnight. And I think that's the important thing.
Yeah, no, it's not. No, it's not. It does sometimes feel fucking quick though, man. Right. Like the last 15 years feels so quick. I don't know. Yeah.
I think some of the younger managers we've interviewed have the sort of general consensus is I think I can say that they generally have not made any money off the acts that they first started managing for 3 years before they start making any money that they could live by. That means they don't have to have a secondary income source, so to speak. And I suppose younger managers today, I mean, London rent prices are ridiculous, so it must be quite difficult to do that job.
Totally.
But I think that's that's a really interesting thing, because one of the things that we try and talk about a bit in the pod, particularly for younger managers, is the concept of money and managing it and the relationship you have with your artists. And we had a manager, I think, when we were interviewing Matt ATC, talking about when his band first started making money, he felt like he couldn't commission, because he was like, I can't commission 20 quid. That makes me an arsehole. Like, they barely can afford the petrol to go to the gig. But then you could get in this weird thing where you're like, well, when do I actually start commissioning? And it's weird, because it's not just a relationship to facilitate their creative process. It's also to facilitate you living and being able to live and do the things you want to do. And I think that's quite...
Yeah, I mean, do you know what? I was, I guess... Speaking specifically about me, I was very fortunate in that, you know, my now wife was always like, God knows why, but she was always like, she was really like my number one supporter, really.
Brilliant.
And, you know, she had a job when we first met. And I was like this guy who wanted to manage bands and start a fucking record label, and her parents were like, "Really?
Sure you do, mate. Sure you do."
And do you know what I mean? So I was really fortunate. I think that I had that relationship, and she like obviously believed in what I was doing, and so that made things easier. But I didn't really start it to make money. Do you know what I mean? So I think honestly, like if your number one priority is making money from the get-go, then you should probably like not choose such a...
You should probably be a banker.
Yeah.
Yeah, but even in that, you still have to sort of, you know, you still have to become a banker. Like, it's not a case of, you don't just, you got to do 10,000 hours. I mean, that's the same fucking everywhere. Do you know what I mean? Just because you want to work in music doesn't mean you got a whole pass to make money. Do you know what I mean? It's like, be better than everyone else, find the best artists, you know, make good decisions. Streaming has taught us that you don't need to rush into deals if you don't want to. Do you know what I mean? Like, maybe, I don't know. But then, you know, I think I think my disposition is like I'll find a way to get stuff done. Do you know what I mean? And sometimes that serves me well, and sometimes it ends up with me sort of like riding myself into the ground. Do you know what I mean? Like we all have had periods in our life like that. But I think, I work in music because, I love music, and, I can't imagine what I would do if I didn't have this place to come to. Do you know what I mean? My self-made vacuum that I don't have to integrate with the outside world if I don't want.
The lights and people with microphones in.
Yeah,
Self-made vacuum's quite a good band name.
Self-made vacuum, yeah.
I'm taking my escape to quite extreme lengths.
We've touched on it already a few bits, maybe more on the artist side of it, but mental health is such a thing that has now thankfully been spoken, I would argue, by a lot of your acts.
Yeah.
Talking about it in the public eye, younger people, it's the most tweeted about thing just in their lives, and that's obviously something Matty from 1975 is able to connect with on such a visceral level. But it's not often spoken as much about in the people behind the scenes and the people working in music. And you touched it on there. It was a brilliant piece you said about the support you had from your now wife, and that's a brilliant thing. Is there any other things you do? Because we've spoken to managers who have one act and they're stressed out because they're worrying about money. You've got a whole bunch of acts. You've got 10 people being employed by you. You have a global, what was it when the last album, 1975 album came out? It was number 1 in 70 countries or some nonsense like that. How on earth? And there is a nice little candle sitting on the desk. Yeah. That's one tip.
It's scented candles.
It's serene. How do you keep a lid on all that?
I don't know. Sounds like a lot, man.
So I didn't come here to freak you out.
It looks like you've upset him just by saying that, Ali.
No, do you know what? I've got amazing staff. I'm fortunate enough to work with amazing artists. We've got great partners around the world. I mean, it's not just me who has to carry it. I mean, I do feel that stuff that you just said, like, when like, my you know, I only really do this and my family life. This is kind of all I do. I don't really see people outside of work. I don't want to. And so I can see, like, my friends work here. Do you know what I mean? I mean, I do have some friends, but you know what I'm saying. So what the reason I'm saying that is, you know, I do think about that stuff, and I like Ed just had a baby, and you know, it feels like you know, it's a massive responsibility for him. But you know, I would be lying if I didn't say that I'm aware people have mortgages and have their own shit to deal with, and you know, some staff you know, need support from time to time on a mental health level, and you know, and as do artists, of course, just because the nature of the job. But yeah, no, I do feel that I do feel a responsibility, and sometimes it does feel quite like a heavy load for sure. But you know, it's not heavier. Like, I had a job fucking unloading Lynx lorries. Do you know what Lynx is? Yeah, the company Lynx with the massive lorries you see on the motorway and late at night.
Bloody hell!
I was the guy who used to unload them all night long.
Strength.
While at university, 4 nights a week, just so I could go to university.
Yeah.
Do you know
Being
what I mean?
a mature student.
Yeah, well, I mean, I was, even if I went as a kid, it was my parents weren't going to pay for it just because they couldn't. Do you know what I mean? I guess you could probably get grants then, but I left home when I was 16, so I didn't really stick around to see about
see if you
further education at that point. But yeah, no, I definitely feel like a responsibility to the artists and people who work here, and I take that really seriously. And you know, and sometimes, like, you know, Matthew's struggles have been quite well documented by now, and like that was a really challenging time. You know, it was difficult, and it's more difficult because, you know, you sort of, you know, I have love for those people. Like, I love Matthew. Like, he's like, you know, one, like, I don't know, my best friend or something. Yeah. So of course, like, you feel stuff, right? But I don't know if I've answered. Were you asking me if I feel like I need support?
Yeah, or if just there's ways that you manage that and ways that you handle that.
Yeah, I mean, I run a lot.
Good man.
Every day. Every morning.
Good man. That's a beautiful tool for dealing with it.
Yeah, and you know, I have a pretty happy home life, and yeah, no, do you know what? However difficult things are, I'm pretty lucky, and yeah, like, you make your own luck, of course. Like, I strongly believe that, but I'm still feel like, you know, you can have the best plan in the world, but if all you get is bad luck, then it's just gonna be bad luck. Yeah. Do you know what I mean? So I do feel like, you know, I guess what I'm saying is it's still first world problems, right? Especially when I see all the shit that's going on in the world, and you know, I can cope with this. I can cope with making amazing records and having
perspective
and like public adulation and awards and podcasts about me.
Yeah, a bit of perspective.
So I made it finally, doing the promo.
Yeah, it was all about you in the first place.
Yeah, it's taken me like 30 years.
Amazing. I think we touch on a little bit now about sort of the future of the industry and what you would like to see moving forward, maybe for your acts, your label, but also the music industry and labels as a whole, what you think you would like to see in the future more of, in terms of, I don't know, anything from signings to the way records are looked at to management to any of those things.
Well, I mean, it's difficult for me because I'm not like the average manager. Like, I haven't done a deal, like a conventional record deal, for like over a decade. Because when I was looking at them at the beginning, the numbers don't add up. I mean, I don't know how else to say it. When I look at it, the numbers don't make any sense. So I stopped doing them, and so for the future of the record industry, it'd be great if more deals were kind of like our deals, which are like profit splits. And I feel that I feel the reason I think that's a better deal for the artist is because I still probably invest maybe more than majors. I don't know, because I haven't worked with them for a long time, but yeah, I feel like we invest really heavily. The artists get a bigger share. We don't take any ancillaries, and they have total creative control, and we will build a strategic plan with them so that they feel respected and amplified and not coloured by other people's
I like that phrase,
opinions or viewpoints or taste even. So yeah, I don't know. For me personally, what I want to see is I want to just continue growing Dirty Hit so that it really does become like a genuine like alternative to signing to any other label. So historically, the artists that might sign to Domino, I would like them to be thinking, actually, that label kind of looks like they are the safest home. Let's go there. Do you know what I mean? And I would like the more commercial leaning artists to look at us and think, well, actually, their creative's fucking on point and they're smashing it commercially. So maybe with us, they can do that. Do you know what I mean? I don't know. My hope for the future is just that I continue to build this in like a tasteful way.
I think it's really interesting when you said about you haven't done a regular deal for like 10 years.
Yeah.
And I think that's really important because there are younger managers out there who are inexperienced and they're just looking at the first deal on the table and they're not necessarily looking into it. So I hope that hearing you say that and people listen to this podcast, they'll think, hold a minute, I don't know if this deal is the right deal for my artist or me, and you're very successful and you've not done a regular deal, so maybe I need to look at it differently and I need to look at independent JVs, whatever work for me. And I think that's really important. So
I think
it's great
also
that you've said that.
It's really important for a manager, and like this is just my opinion, and like some may say, oh, it's easy for you to have that opinion because you're successful, but this was my opinion at the beginning. And like I'm the guy who like remortgaged my house to start a label. Do you know what I mean? So I don't mind like. In fact, I'd rather gamble on myself, to be honest with you, than on a random.
Unless you're in control.
And so what I was going to say was it's, the model's kind of flawed because, like, historically, like a manager needs to commission a deal to live. A lawyer needs an artist to do a deal to get paid. Do you know what I mean? And it's like, well, okay, but you both represent the artist. So your need to get paid is secondary to their need for a good deal or the best possible terms.
Totally.
And the same applies to a manager, really. And if you're signing deals to get your 20%, then you're probably going to get fired before those deals mean anything material financially anyway, because no one gets rich off an advance, right? You get rich off business terms. Do you know what I mean? Not advances. Advances are for schmucks. You know what I mean? But it's true, doesn't it?
Yeah, totally.
Really. Yeah. It's just it's shortcut. It's blinding you into submission. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. Which I suppose is going back to what you were talking about earlier of all that initial upfront chase.
Yeah.
And then you get with a label with some labels and then it's gone and you're like, where's all that?
But you know what? You'll be surprised to hear that I'm not anti-labels.
Oh.
Like I think, it's very de jure, like to say you don't need a label. Like, I mean, I've experienced it myself. I had someone sat in my office for a meeting with a record label. Yeah. And they're telling me, with their new artist, telling me they don't want a record deal, and I'm just like, I just felt saying, well, why the fuck are you here?
What are you doing sitting here?
Because we're a record company, and you're a manager, so the artist has a manager.
Yeah.
Like, so why are you here? It's like, and obviously, like, if if you Chance the Rapper,
Mhm.
then yeah, you probably you're cool. You don't need a label, just need some distribution with services set up. But most of these artists saying they don't need labels are not Chance the Rapper.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? And I'm sure like many of them will succeed without labels. And like I love this guy Roy Blair, and I really want to sign him, and he's amazing. If you guys haven't checked it out, you should check it out. It's fucking
Definitely.
brilliant. He's doing like 500,000 monthly listeners on Spotify. My favorite unsigned artist at the moment would sign him in a heartbeat, but they don't want to do a deal,
Right.
because they just don't want to be on any label, and I respect that. Do you know what I mean? But I do feel that there's always going to be labels, because there's always going to be artists who need labels to invest in their careers, and there's always going to be people like Matthew Healy who have amazing ideas, and need someone to help them execute them. There's always going to be the need for collaborators, and that's what I see my label as. It's really an artist partnership tool. That's all it. I mean, it is a label, but it's a partnership. It's not about just acquiring rights and not investing and not adding value and not building a career. It's about total investment, emotionally, financially, like creatively. There's always going to be labels. Well, at least I think so.
Yeah. And that translates with Dirty Hit, even when you're looking at videos and you're seeing all the artists pop up in one band's video. It's like even that simple tool is like, well, this feels like a family. It feels nice when you walk in the office.
And I think the artists that are that way inclined will find us anyway. I mean, I don't really look for artists, to be honest with you. They always just they just serendipity. Yeah, always.
Did you ever see that? So interesting, was saying about not being anti-label, the 30 Seconds to Mars documentary they did. Did you ever see it, where it was when they were making, was it like a third album with Flood, and he was desperately trying to get off his label deal.
Oh, really?
And he explained in layman's terms, like, they take 80%, I get 20%, they spend this much, I never recoup. And he basically, the whole documentary is him hating on his label. And at the end it says, and then he went back to his label because he realised he couldn't do it all on his own. He needed the global outreach. So it's the best sort of like weird comeback at the end. It's almost like you think the label made him put that on the thing to be like, actually, you came back to us because you realised you couldn't do it all on your own.
He's a
and
weird
you needed
dude,
the global like team here. So
I like
really
him, but he's fucking weirdo.
But yeah, it's just so funny because he's on a rant for the entire documentary. He's like, I'm going to do it by myself. I'm going to do everything. And then it's just, at the end, he's just like, just signed another deal because I just want to be an artist. I don't have to think about the business side. And that was his reason. So I just think when you said that, it's really interesting. I think a lot of people have that thing. I suppose that's why a lot of people use majors, isn't it? It's because you feel like necessarily majors, but labels like you as well, you can get so far on your own, but then when you need that global pickup and that global outreach, and you and as an artist you don't necessarily want to think about that side, you want to just concentrate on your art. That's when a label and your manager, of course, come into it.
But honestly, like, I mean, I have like strategic partnerships with majors, and for that reason, and like John Janik in America has been a huge champion of Dirty Hit, like the biggest champion of Dirty Hit. You know what I mean? He's like one of my dear friends. And David Joseph in the UK, like a huge champion of Dirty Hit. And it would surprise people actually, I think, to know like quite how much of a champion someone like that has been. Do you know what I mean? And sometimes it's it's not about like deals or market share or whatever, however people dress it up. It's I think these people like started working in music for the same reason that we did. Do you know what I mean? Like I started working in music because I love music, and so did most people who work in music. So I think there's no right or wrong way to do stuff. There's just a way that works for you, I find, in life, and I really hope that we get to work with like loads more amazing artists. I can't imagine sort of what life would be like without that possibility. Do you know what I mean? And I guess maybe that's why I feel like for labels like Dirty Hit, we're always going to have like artists who want to be here, because I think that culture like is quite I think when I talk to artists and we talk like this, I think they really believe it, because it is the truth.
Yeah.
Whereas if it's that's the thing about me, like I can be quite convincing when I'm telling the truth, but I'm like the worst fucking liar in the world. I'm not very good at being dishonest because I'm just not.
That's a lovely place to kind of try and draw it to a close a little. I've never heard that phrase. I'm very convincing when I'm telling the truth before.
But you know what I mean?
It's so obvious.
I feel sort of passionate about what I do.
Just a quick one to end on, which is always a nice one, I think, is what was the best piece of advice someone's ever given you?
My wife's gonna love this.
We'll say you like to say.
She in one's life, business life, you come across lots of different types of people and etc. And one of the things that I've experienced is one of my pet hates is sort of like injustice, and so there's been times where in my working life where things have happened and things have happened and people have been dishonest. They've lied about stuff, and my wife's always been like, I'm quite passionate about stuff, and I find it really hard to not say exactly what I'm thinking, and I like, and sometimes, and like this is actually important for every manager out there. If you listen to nothing else, heed this. Sometimes, well, what I was going to say as advice, what I would say is, first of all, is like, sometimes you should just let other people do the talking and just see where it lands, because sometimes when you're doing deals, especially, people talk themselves into a corner and they hate silence. So just have a bit of silence in your meeting. Right? And but anyway, my wife was saying to me that through our lives, like, stuff happens and we're powerless over it for the most part, and sometimes in the short term it might make us look bad, right? And my wife's always been like, yeah, but the truth always comes out. You just gotta hang tough and know that if you keep your side of the street clean, soon enough people will be like, oh shit, your side's clean. Do you know what I mean? And that's what happened.
Perfect.
Amen. One last question, and it might be a stupid one, considering the room we're sitting in here. We've got gold records on the wall. We've got sold out Madison Square Garden. We've got God knows what else. And
modest.
Awards galore. What is the one moment, and maybe let's say the last 10 years, when you've gone, fuck, this is really going right? Or the moment you've been most proud of an artist?
Yeah, let me think, because it's often not what you would think.
Yeah.
I don't know. Most proud. Most people would say, like, I was given this George Martin A&R award, right?
Yeah.
Which is pretty amazing, and Matthew from 1975 like presented it to me, and that was like incredible, and it's like a real sort of, like, I was actually in shock. Actually, I couldn't quite comprehend what was going on, and it was bizarre. So one would think it's those type of things, but it wasn't at all. Like, it's always been, I don't know, like when the Japanese House album was such a mission to make, and she entered it, started. She was so fragile at the beginning, and has subsequently become this really kind of visceral, like, powerful, respected, like, critically acclaimed kind of writer, producer, musician. So it's that sort of stuff. But it wasn't that either. It's more, I don't know. I think, I don't know. I don't know. I'd never, honestly, I never look at things like that.
Uh-huh.
No, I like everyone here always says to me, and bands I work with, that I'm never in the moment. It's like, do you know what I mean? This is turning into like
Just another therapy session.
Yeah, exactly. Therapy session.
You wanted mental health.
Yeah.
I don't know what I'm most proud of. I'm most proud of. I don't know. I guess it feels egotistic. It feels boastful. I don't know what I'm proud of. I'm just doing what we said we were going to do.
Mm-hmm.
You know, we're just going to keep making. Matthew and I sort of made a commitment to each other that we were just going to make as many records as we possibly could that we are proud of by as many artists as we can before the end of days.
That is a good goal and a good place to finish. Nice one. Well, thank you very much, Jamie. Thank you for giving us some time.
Thank you so much. It's been amazing.
Thank you for giving us those wonderful pearls of wisdom.
Oh my god!
Is the end of days? Is the end of days the apocalypse?
Huh? Yeah, the apocalypse.
Apocalypse.
The impending apocalypse.
Yep.
It's coming soon, you know.
Apparently so.
Don't doubt it.
Nothing about that.
Well, no, I know. I understand.
Oh, what a man. We can't thank Jamie enough for giving us his time. Originally, he'd said, yeah, come down to the office, I'll put you in for 45 minutes, and we thought, amazing. That is more than enough. I flew down from Glasgow just on that day, just to do that interview. We ended up talking for, I'd say, around about 2 hours.
Yeah, he was amazing, and there was just so much knowledge. I was fascinated, and I think he said in the interview about how, we went into this room that was all full of all the plaques and all the amazing things he's done, but he was just, I can genuinely say, the nicest, most down-to-earth guy. Like, you would want to just go for a pint with him and chat about the world. It was an amazing interview.
And it's amazing, like, a guy like that has been with his biggest artist, Matty, since Matty was 16 years old, and they have grown and flourished and come to dominate the world of pop music together, which is a nice thing.
Full disclosure here, Ali, I am a bit of a 1975 fangirl. So that bit in the interview where Jamie was talking about hearing the demo of Robbers, I think, for the first time, and he said the words, I feel the same way about that song as I did the first time I heard it. And that just literally made my little heart just jump for joy. I loved the fact that a manager just is so passionate and has heard a song and has never lost his sort of love for it. And I think that's so important, and it's probably one of the reasons why he is such a successful manager today.
Don't forget to subscribe on whatever podcast service or app you use so you get the next episode straight into your feed. And if you felt like being super kind, please leave us a review. It would help us spread these stories far and wide. You can also let us know what you thought of the first episode via our Twitter. It's @ManageThatPod.
So thanks so much for listening, guys. We will be back next week with a new episode and more insights from another amazing music manager. How Did You Manage That is brought to you by the MMF and sponsored by AWOL. The podcast is produced and hosted by Sophie Paluch and Ally McCrae. Original music by Callum Wiseman.